Welcome to the Autofocus podcast. I'm Scott.
And I'm Dan.
And I want to say thank you for everybody that's listened to our old episodes, our first handful of episodes. And please subscribe. Like, we're trying to grow we got friends and family in the area that we're trying to share this with. And we want to try and create an audience. So please follow us on YouTube, subscribe, like all our videos. We're also available on Spotify. We're available on, hold on, let me pull it up, Breaker, Google Podcasts. We're still waiting on Apple. Apple's taken a while. We're also available on Radio Public. So if you're into audio only, we are still available on those platforms. But so, Dan, what's the topic that we're going to listen to tonight, or we're going to talk about tonight?
So the topic tonight is going to be kind of how we got started with our camera brand. You know, why you picked Nikon and Sony, why I picked Canon.
Cool.
Yeah, go down that road.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah. It's kind of it's a fun topic. I mean, both you and I are kind of like, I don't gearheads when it comes to this stuff. Like,
yeah.
We research.
And there's the Canon and Nikon war. You know what I mean? Like the two heavy hitters for sure.
You totally just cut out there. I literally have no idea what you said. That's the difficulty of doing a podcast at two different locations.
Yeah.
But I have no idea what you said. So, but yeah. So, yeah, we're both gearheads. It's something that we both like to research. Sometimes we buy gear even though we don't even need it, which is
I have so much gear that I don't need.
Which is it is definitely brutal, but it makes the hobby fun and it makes the profession fun, for sure. Yeah, like Dan said, I started out with Nikon. I don't think I was necessarily drawn to Nikon. It was just like readily available. I mean, my first like we talked about in the history episode, like I started with a little Sony like extra zoom camera, but there was no loyalty there. It was just like what was available, I'm sure, at Best Buy. And then when it came for me to buy an SLR or DSLR, I just went to Best Buy and bought a Nikon. There wasn't much research at that time.
I remember me and you went back and forth a little bit, and I was trying to get you to buy Canon because I was like, we can share lenses. Like, you should go with Canon.
Now that you say that,
and then you ended up getting your Nikon.
I think I do kind of remember that conversation actually. Now that you say that,
yeah.
So I guess
I think you got a good deal on a Nikon or something.
Yeah,
but I was like, damn, like that could have been.
I think you're right. Actually, I remember that conversation. So yeah, I ended up buying a Nikon D5200. And it was awesome. And I had a kit lens, which is 1855 crop sensor. And I also bought, right when I bought the camera, I bought a 7300 millimeter lens, which is like for people that aren't is a really high zoom. So like on a crop sensor too, with a crop like factor, that's like 450 millimeters. Like that's far. So that was cool to have that lens. I mean, yeah, that was definitely a fun lens. But yeah, I give Nikon a hard time because I think maybe the technology perspective they're like more they just kind of like laid back. I feel like they just produce the same camera every year and put a new name on it, whereas like other brands are a lot more innovative. But
hey, Canon did the same thing.
Yeah. So
yeah.
But the Nikon was great. It had like first of all, it's 24 megapixels, which was awesome. So definitely had no problem from like blowing up photos or anything like that. I also had a swivel screen, which we talked about a little bit, makes such a big difference when it's
huge. Yeah.
Whether you're shooting yourself or even like getting low angles, or especially with video, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
So with video, you have the ability to like, if you're holding like a low angle, like you talked about filming skateboarding, like just being able to tilt that screen and be able to like, hand hold your camera, like that's got to make a huge difference, especially for the stuff that you shoot.
Yeah, I took the viewfinder off of my C100 Mark II, completely off, and I just use the screen, and I use it it's unbelievable, but I use it.
So
every time.
You use like an external monitor, is what you're talking about on your C.
No, the flip out screen.
Yeah.
No, so I took my viewfinder off the eyepiece.
Just so I could instead of having to like put the camera up. Gotcha.
Right. So I took that off. I never really used it anyways, and it let me put it on the gimbal better. And the flip out screen's amazing. You can set it up to the side, and you can look at it from the side if you're on a tripod in a tight spot.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
Yeah. So that's one thing I really miss because I shoot Sony now, so that's one thing I do definitely really miss is like a fully articulating screen. But the thing with the Nikon, at least not the full frame version, like I had the crop sensor, the D5200, it was real plasticky. Like there weren't really any customizable buttons. There was just one. So like as far as like ergonomics were good because it was actually a decent sized camera, but with a battery grip on there, but it only had one customizable button and like not a ton of it was programmable. So like you were kind of stuck to shoot the way Nikon wanted you to shoot.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It wasn't. It was good. I mean, I used it for a while, but when time came for me to upgrade, that's when I started, just like diving down that hole of like, okay, I'm gonna research
Doing some research.
every brand.
Yeah.
And
Now, why did you go with Canon and not go with like a newer Nikon?
You mean the second time, like when I bought my
When you bought your Sony?
I don't know. I guess one was value. So like I was looking
Because you were somewhat invested into the Nikon.
Yeah, I mean I had
atmosphere,
like
right? You had a couple lenses.
I had four. Four lenses for it. So like definitely invested. Well, the other thing is those were all crop sensor lenses. So like I knew I wanted to get into a full frame just from a low light perspective and like for people that don't know, like typically full frame sensors allow for much better low light capability, whether it's for photography or astrophotography, which like stars and moons, or just like in a dark environment like I'm in right now. But so I wanted full frame. So I really didn't have the option to say like, okay, I'm going to keep my lenses. Like there was no point. Like it wouldn't work on a full frame camera. Why I didn't go with Canon, because you had Canon and we could have shared stuff. I don't know. I think it was value. Like I kind of was intrigued by this mirrorless camera,
because
right?
Canon didn't have a mirrorless by that time.
At the time, right? So the way this is like really basic, but the way a DSLR camera works is there's a sensor, and let's just for the video and the podcast, in the back of the camera, right? So when you look through your optical, like your viewfinder or anything like that, it actually like is being reflected off of a mirror. And then what happens is when you hit the shutter button, which is the button that allows you to take a picture, the mirror flips up and it allows for the light to come in, which then projects onto the sensor in the back of the camera. So that's how traditional DSLRs have worked for the past 20 years maybe. Yeah. Mirrorless cameras, there is no optical sensor. It is 100% digital. So it actually, if you take the lens off the camera, your sensor is like right at the front of the camera. It's not like hidden in the back. There's nothing in the way protecting the sensor. So when you're viewing the image on your camera, whether it's your LCD screen or your video like eyepiece, it's all a digital signal. So whatever is getting projected onto the sensor through the lens is actually what is going to be portrayed on the SD card, what's being saved onto the camera.
That was literally like such a good breakdown of what they are.
Well, thank you very much. God. I mean, that was completely ad-lib.
It was very accurate.
Yeah, all right. So that's good, because I'm sure somebody's going to fact check me and be like, no, the angle.
Well, of course there'll be that guy, but yeah. It was very basic and to the point. Yeah, that was
right.
Good.
So, so that really intrigued me, because like we live in a digital age, and like you can do a lot more with a mirrorless camera from a software perspective because of that, because it's digitally put onto the sensor. So like you have it on your what we keep calling the C100, which is like your video camera, your dedicated video camera, but like autofocus peaking. So what it does is like it will tell you what's in focus in your camera, or like they call it zebra, which is like when something is overblown. So like a bunch of digital features that you get to use in camera, so that helps you get a better product at the end. So that really intrigued me. So I definitely was like, I want a mirrorless. Also, they're traditionally a lot smaller than DSLRs because there's not as many moving parts. So one of my bad habits is I never carry my camera. And like I was hoping, and it has come to fruition a little bit, but not as much as I thought, that I'd carry this camera around more because it is smaller. I the problem is now my backpack's full of all kinds of other stuff, whether it's like, different lenses and battery packs and lights and all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff that you don't actually need, but we both like, or most photographers and videographers like. So yeah, and Sony had been in the mirrorless full frame game, I guess you could call it, in that portion of the industry for longer than anybody else, at least from a consumer perspective. So
Yep.
I got a
Yep.
camera that was actually at the time one model older and their basic version of it. So I have the A7 Mark II, which is a phenomenal camera, but it wasn't at the forefront of technology for when I bought the camera. So it was more cost effective. I think the body cost me like $1,000.
Yeah.
So I would have gone with Canon if they had that, just so you and I could share lenses. But
Hmm.
at the time, the EOS R, which you own, I was just coming out, and it was like, I think $3,000 or $2,800 body only.
It's I think it 20 something, yeah.
Yeah, so it was just expensive. It was more of an investment for me, and I just felt like I was drawn towards the Sony. I mean, a lot of like YouTubers that I follow, I saw one out and somebody shooting it, and I went, "Wow, that thing's so small, and that's a full frame sensor." The other thing that really like drew me in, and actually I can grab one. We can use this right here. I've got this right here, is an old vintage lens. I believe this was built in 1972. It is made by a company called, I think it's, I don't know how to say this, Asahi Opti Company, but it's a super Takamar lens. It's 135 millimeter, and I bought an adapter, which I don't have here, but it's a little piece of metal, which allows me to mount it to my mirrorless camera. So you couldn't do that with a DSLR because this is like super nerdy, but they call it flange distance. So the distance between the sensor and a DSLR is a lot further away. Where these cameras back in the day, the lens for 35 millimeter, like where the film went by, was right up against it. So it allows for you to adapt to get the flange distance correct, depending on the company or the mount that of the vintage lens.
And it's all manual at that point.
Yeah, so this is 100% manual, so
Yeah.
there's no autofocus.
Yep.
But I love to marry today's technology and vintage technology. Like I love things that are patinaed and old, but like mechanical and like, I don't know if you can hear this. I'll put this up against the mic, but like just like if I turn we'll be quiet. We turn the aperture ring, you can kind of hear that click. Like it's just like super mechanical lens. And the other thing is they're super affordable. Like I looked up the value of this. I think it was like $70. It's 135 millimeters, so it's kind of like a mid-range zoom, and it's an f 3.5. So for a zoom, it's pretty good as far as how fast it is. It's not like super like an f 1.8 or f 2.8, but for $70, I have 135 milliliter,
Right.
and it's a really manual process. Some people really like to I don't know, you're not a big coffee drinker like I am, but some people really like that like pour over coffee. Like you got to get the filter out, you got to pour the coffee, grind the coffee beans, put in. It's that process that they enjoy. The product's great, but at the end of the day, it's the process, and that's why I like this type of thing. It's like I can't just turn my camera and click a picture. Like I have to think, okay, I'm gonna shoot f8 here, and okay, so I have to think about each thing that I shoot, which is, I don't know, it's cool, it's fun. I got another 50 mil. It's a 50 mil f2, and also look how small.
Yeah, because you're not just changing the focus, you're changing the aperture.
You have to, because
exactly.
The only thing the camera can
Yeah.
do is we haven't gotten into like the little nuances of like ISO and stuff like that, and I'm sure we will, but the only thing the camera can adjust is ISO if you set it to automatic, because it's not getting any digital signal from these lenses from the 70s. I also really love the size, right? So I talked about buying a Sony camera because of how small it was and being able to travel. This is a 50 mil. Look how small that thing is. I mean, I literally can toss this in my pocket. Like if I could put it right here, and it's like I could always have a 50 mil lens with me, and I could be walking around with my camera. Now, granted,
What is that? Is that a 1.8?
this is an f2, so it's a 50 mil f2.
F2. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool, man. I just love, again, you can hear the aperture and like it's small and it's just like cool. Again, I love to marry that old technology. So
Yeah.
that actually, that in itself had like a huge it was a huge like reason I went to it, just like the vintage aspect. Those are the only two I have,
Hmm.
but I use the 135 mil all the time because right now, from a modern lens perspective, I only have the 28 to 75. I have a 50 mil f1.8 and then a 20 mil f2.8. So I do, the next lens I think I'm gonna buy will probably be Tamron. So I shoot with a Tamron 28-75 f2.8 because Sony lenses are phenomenal, like super dope, but they're ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
And I just like they're I think if I think it's $2,000 or $2,500 for the lens alone for the 24 to 70 mil f2.8, and like I think the Tamron version was $900. So there's a big difference. And it's still weather sealed and everything. But the next lens I want to buy is going to be the 70 to 180 f2.8 that Tamron came out with. That way I can get like for what you do, like wildlife photography, stuff
Yeah.
like that. Because I do miss that. Because
And
on my
that's
Nike, go ahead.
yeah. No, I was gonna say, the big thing in photography is, invest into lenses, not into the body, because lenses I mean, you're using, however old that in the 70s,
Right. And it still works
and you're still using
perfect.
it.
Right.
You could never use a body in the same kind of way that you could, still use a lens. So you can always, transfer your lenses. The mounts are still usually going to be the same,
Exactly.
but you're always upgrading bodies. So
Exactly. So that's
yeah,
that's definitely something that I think I'm with Sony for a while now. At this point, I've really started to spend some money and some time with it, and I really like the ergonomics and the customizability. Like it's almost everything is modifiable on the camera, like all the buttons. And
yeah,
I'm
oh,
sure
yeah.
most like modern cameras, but again with my Nikon, it was, but it just wasn't to the level that this is. So I really,
Well, so I will say Sony gives you every feature you can change. They give
dude,
you, that's why their menu is so
it's
just
complicated.
all over the
It is,
place,
but once you
because
get
they
used
give
to it,
you
it's fine.
everything. Yeah. But on a Canon, it's very simple and easy, and you still can do a lot of customization, but not as much as Sony.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I love that. I mean, it allows me to, when I do shoot, like I actually have two programmable like dials on the top. So one of them set up for me to do like running gun with my kids, so that like it instantly goes to aperture mode, but it auto adjusts like my ISO, everything, so I can get those pictures really quick. Quick. The other custom setting is for landscape. So it's all 100% manual, but even my white balance, everything I set manually. Whereas I know I could go to the manual dial or the aperture priority mode, but it's nice to know like it will automatically change all my custom buttons quickly if I do that, which it's a cool feature. It's one of my favorite for the camera for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. How about you? I mean, I know you like we talked about it. But you tell your story
Yeah, it
a
was
little
kind of
bit.
the same process with Canon. It was just around. It was just what I picked up for the first camera. I Canon was kind of like the brand back then, so I think that's why I went with. I just it was familiar.
Was
So
so
I picked up the T2i.
when you say it was the brand, I mean there wasn't as much YouTube and stuff back there. Like, what was it? Somebody else that
Right.
had one?
I think I just saw it everywhere. Like my first Canon video camera was a Canon, like that bought with my dad back in the day. Everything that I kind of got that was electronic camera wise, it said Canon on it. So I think I was just so used to
Right.
Canon, I just went with I didn't even think about Nikon.
Right.
Yeah, so I just went Canon. I mean, Canon has a lot of glass, and
That's definitely
and
something that
yeah,
that I don't want to say suffer with, because Sony mirrorless, it's starting to catch up with third party lenses like
yeah. Well, then I was gonna say the third party lenses is huge
yeah,
now. Yeah.
Sigma and Tamron are now making like really high quality third party
Mm-hmm.
lenses, but Canon has always had such a phenomenal like selection from themselves. I mean, even affordable versions. It doesn't even have to be like the top of the line like Sony, what they call G Master.
Right. So I know people with Sonys that have Canon, Canon lenses on their
Oh,
on their
for
camera.
sure. Yeah.
So they'll mount, they'll mount Canon because they have just it's good glass.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just went with Canon, and I've also owned a Panasonic DVX200.
Which is
Again, I was buying gear, loved it.
which is video camera, right? That's video
So
camera.
yeah,
only.
that one's a straight big video camera. Yep. And the colors just weren't. I mean, we talked about it, I think, on the first episode, but the colors just weren't there.
So you're talking,
Canon still, I think, has the best colors.
Yeah, Canon's definitely pretty good. I mean,
skin tone. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about, for people that aren't into photography, like we are, they're just like casual users. They talk about like your, it's not color saturation, but it's like there's a word for it, and I can't think of it right now. It's like the way the camera interprets all the colors in the real world. So color profiles. So for some reason, Canon just like knows how to do skin tone, and it doesn't like modify it or oversaturate it. Yeah. That's something I'm definitely jealous of, for sure, that you get. The thing is, at the end of the day, we do color grade everything.
Exactly. You can correct a lot of stuff in post now.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
But
especially when you're shooting raw, and then when you
right.
start getting up there, it's pretty ridiculous.
Auto white balance and all that stuff. I mean, or be able to, when you can fix your white balance in post because you shoot raw, that was like a game changer for me, because I never pick the right white balance. It's just like, I never know. I don't have a white
with
card,
photos, it's
and
crazy.
it's just like, it's too hard. So that video camera, though, I mean, maybe go through some of the features of like why you picked that camera, because like there was.
So actually, good question. I picked it for wildlife. And it's funny because I didn't listen to a wildlife shooter. His name's Birdie Gregory or something. He's an amazing Nat Geo wildlife guy, and I Facebook messaged him, and I was like, hey, I'm trying to buy another a wildlife camera, because I was using my 7D at the time to do video. And he was like, well, you should look into the SF7, which is a Sony camera. And it's their cinema line. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I had, I think the Panasonic that I bought was like $4,500, or it was maybe almost $5,000. So it was up there.
Right.
So I was like, okay, so I have a little bit of money to spend. Besides my 7D, I've never had a camera where I could where I switched the lenses on it, and like I was thinking video camera, like I could just focus on them and zoom in and out, and like that would be good.
Right.
And I regret it. I should have listened to him 100%. I got it. I did love it. I actually loved it. It was just, I didn't have to bring anything. All I needed was a battery and SD card.
Wait,
I could just
hold on. So here, I love this. Like this, you reached out to a guy that you like admired, right? And he responds to you.
And then I just said, fuck you, pretty much.
Right. You follow this guy on social media or whatever it is, and then you reach out to him, and he goes, this is what he responds, which I would have been so fired up with, because I've done that a couple times.
He gave me the best advice.
But then you just go, nah, I know better than this guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna go left.
That's great.
Yeah. So I got it, and I mean it was great because it was so like I just needed the one camera and that was it. But it just wasn't. It wasn't giving me the.
There's something about it though. It's like
blown out background.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd explain it. I'd use it, and this might not make it. This analogy probably doesn't work, but I'd use it for cars. Right. There's so many different cars out there. If you're a car guy or a motorcycle guy or whatever it is, you get something, and then you don't feel like drawn to it, or you don't feel like there's just something about it that like you don't want to use it. You don't want to drive it, or you don't like. So I totally get the analogy, but.
Yeah. So I actually had that camera for a little while, and then I ended up getting the C100 Mark II while I still had this camera, and I absolutely I was like, this is a game changer.
Yeah.
And I absolutely loved it. And so I used, and still stuck with Canon. Yep. And just recently, I right before I got the EOS R, I was almost switched to Sony because
I know, because I was trying hard to get you there.
Yeah. I was just like, they just pack so many features in their cameras for video features too, like photos, but also for video. Mm-hmm. And I really was going to switch. And then I was like, the EOS R came out, and I was like, I'm going to get that. Yeah. And actually my girl bought it for me for my birthday, I think. But
and I do think at the end of the day, first of all, we'll get into glass and lenses in a second, but
I'm well invested in the Canon.
You were fully invested.
I would have had to sell everything.
It would have been a financial investment for you, but for you to change from one company to another, it's not just the investment, it's also the ergonomics and how familiar you are with the camera.
Oh yeah.
It took me honestly a good 4 or 5 months before I even felt comfortable where the shutter button was, or like like where just to like change one or two things, because like the cool thing about my Nikon is I could go out and shoot in the dark with like on a tripod to do like long exposures or astrophotography, and I didn't need to turn a light on. Like I could just touch my camera and adjust all my
Right,
settings.
you knew where all the buttons were.
Where even today, and I've been shooting with this thing for not a year, probably 9 months, I still don't know it perfectly. So for you to be able to stay with a company that's relatively consistent on like where their controls are and their menu systems and stuff, there's a huge value to that.
Right. And that's the menu system's pretty much the same throughout. Even when you go back to the T2i, menu system's just the same.
Yeah.
So and definitely the film. Yeah.
No, I was just to say, so you still had the Sony video camera, and it was a C100, right? That you have, not C200.
C100 Mark II.
Okay, C100 Mark II. And is there 3 versions? So there's C100, C200, and C300.
There's a C. I think there's a C400 and there's a C500.
So from a video perspective, and that's a pro level video camera. That's an entry level in the grand scheme of things. But for you going from shooting from a DSLR to shooting straight video on a professional camera,
because this doesn't shoot photos. I can only shoot video on this,
which is what you're recording your podcast on right now.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So the reason why I switched is because it records over. So you're at 30 minutes right now. So why don't you check your?
Yeah, let me check. I was just gonna say mine stopped, so I just hit record again.
Exactly. So the C100 will record until the SD card runs out, and so I was like, I'll just use that.
Yeah, and that I totally get. The other thing, it's got better battery life. And I guess
the battery life.
I guess I'd ask you. I mean, I'm not as knowledgeable in it because I just haven't done the research. I think the video that comes out of my camera is like for what I do, phenomenal. I think we shot the first podcast and I just shot like regular movie mode without S-Log.
Yeah.
We'll get into picture profiles at some point. We changed that and you were like, dude, that footage
came out so much better.
Way better. So why would somebody go with like a straight up video camera over like a mirrorless camera that can do everything?
Well, if you're not a photographer, so like you said, earlier with the DSLRs and your mirrorless camera, you get peaking, you get zebras, you get all those video features that you really don't get. I mean, now they're starting to be relevant in almost every camera you get, but back then it wasn't. You know, you'd have to buy a video camera to get those kind of things, unless you hacked. It was called Magic Lantern.
Oh, that's what it was. We've totally messed that up.
It would give you those video features, which were amazing.
Right.
You know, because these things were being used to shoot a lot of video, not just photos. So those things are huge.
Yeah.
And then also internal NDs. You know, my camera has internal ND filters, which is great because if you go out in the sunlight, you know, it's like putting sunglasses over your lens.
Perfect. So I was just going to explain what that is. So
try to explain. Yeah.
When you shoot, it's more prevalent in video than I think it is photography, and we can explain the difference again when we start to get more technical here. But it's like Dan said, it's like putting sunglasses over the lens so that you can keep your shutter and exposure and all kinds of stuff at a particular. You can keep your settings at a particular area so that it looks cinematic or it looks appropriate without overblowing something. The other thing
if you're shooting a 2.8, you know, out in bright sunlight without a ND on, everything's going to be blown out.
And when you shoot you get that blurred background that people love from a professional camera. So those are reasons you'd use an ND. But the other thing I was thinking of when you shoot on like a professional like Canon C100 is your not depth of field. What's it called when you've got like really high shadows and a really bright
dynamic range?
Your dynamic range. Perfect.
Yeah.
Your dynamic range is far superior than what you get in like a mirrorless camera. So it allows for you, like I'm sure somebody's taking a photo on their camera or whatever, where it's like you see a silhouette of somebody, but the background's exposed, or vice versa. Like you see somebody, but then you can't see the background. That's called dynamic range. When a camera can get both, it's got great dynamic range.
Yeah. So, and then also it has XLR. For people who don't know that, it's like an audio So I can plug in a regular shotgun mic right into my camera and pick up way better audio than what a DSLR could provide.
Yeah, so an XLR is like I'm sure they use it for more than audio because I mainly use it in audio, and it gives you just a higher quality audio output it's a professional cable essentially. It's a professional cable opposed to like 3.5 millimeter jack, which everybody's used to with headphones.
And then the preamps too in the camera are much better than a DSLR, stuff like that. So
I guess I don't know the answer to this question. Like I'm recording this an external Zoom recorder. How is something like that compared to the C100?
Ooh.
Like you've done more
I don't know.
external audio, and like have you ever been like, oh man, I wish I had used an external audio recorder?
No. I usually use an external recorder just because I always have a backup, so I'll record externally, but then I'll also record into the C100.
Sure, are you doing that right now?
But there's a mic on top of the C100 and then this, but it's not my shotgun mic.
What?
So what I usually do is I would use my shotgun mic.
Come on, I would have done that as a backup.
You always gotta have a backup.
I didn't know. All right, maybe we'll do that for the future. But
the C100 and those kind of things, it's a great people use it. It's a documentary camera. It's a real rugged. You can run and gun. They'll have it on a shoulder rig because it gives you everything in one. So you don't need that external recorder.
Right.
It has a great mics and it's a great overall camera for run and gun shooters and.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's cool. Hey, I learned something new today. I didn't actually, because I'm just getting into audio, I didn't really think about the audio difference that you get out of like a professional video camera versus a mirrorless camera. But that's cool.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. And audio is a whole different subject. I mean, audio, lighting, that's a whole, it's crazy.
Yeah,
to try to learn, to be like really good at all of them is very difficult.
That's cool. So we haven't even gotten into your like. We've just done your video camera, so now you got to talk about like. So you went from your Canon T2i, and then what was your next?
Yeah, I went to the T2i, and then I bought the 7D because I was getting into wildlife photography, and then I had that for years, and then I upgraded to the 7D Mark II, which I just got rid of when I had my I got rid of it because I had my EOS-R and I just wasn't using it.
Yep.
So I was like, I might as well sell it. But when I sold it, I missed it. I was bummed.
So I guess I would ask you, what were the major differences? We don't have to go into the antics of the difference between the T2i and the 7D, but what was the difference
the 70
between
and the 70
the
Mark II?
Mark I and the Mark II? Like, because I'm sure there was a premium that you paid to go from like the Mark I to the Mark II at the time.
Absolutely, but it was kind of like you said. It was only a couple features. It was just a newer camera. Right. They only put a little bit in, but it was newer. The ISO was better, definitely from the original 7D.
So low light.
Yep. So low light was a little better. They gave, I think it was 2 frames a second faster. So the shutter count.
Now it
was at 10
one of those
instead
cameras
of 8.
that like has a really high, like frame rate for shooting stills. Even today, like I think my camera only shoots like 7 frames or 6 or 7 frames per second. So for a camera that was
it's a good action camera.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So which made it a great wildlife camera. So
cool.
But yeah, so I mean there wasn't crazy differences. It was just a little upgrade from it. So
now you got to get into the big boy, the EOS-R, which as far as Canon goes right now is the top of the line mirrorless camera that they offer, right?
Yes. Yeah, they're about to come out with the EOS R5,
which I'm
and
sure
that
you'll
will
get
replace
at some
it.
point.
But yeah, but yeah. So the EOS R, I mean, I'm happy with it. It shoots 4K. Right. It doesn't do 4K 60,
which your C100 does.
Is crazy. No, so my C100 only shoots 1080.
Really?
But it's a 4K sensor. So it's internally it's shooting 4K but downsampling it into 1080. So you're getting a crisper 4K image.
So you can't shoot 4K. You mean crisper 1080 image. So you can't get 4K
right
out of your C100. It's a Canon just saying you can't do it.
Right, because essentially then you're competing with its next, with the C300. You know what I
that,
mean?
that
So
shit,
like
that
they
really
want you to
that shit
buy the
frustrates
next
me,
camera.
man. That's like, come on, the
Right,
technology's there. So there's got
right.
to are
It
there
is there. I mean, it's a 4K sensor. Yeah,
are there
it's
hacks
definitely
out
there.
there to like make it
Not yet. I don't think there will be. I mean, this camera's 7 years old, maybe five
Is it
or 7
really?
years old. So it's old. So yeah, if there was hacks out there, someone would have came out
Wow,
with
I'm
it already.
surprised. I didn't realize that. I thought that thing shot 4K.
Yeah.
So all right, we'll get back to the USR. So that I was definitely jealous when you got that because that's like it had all the features,
I
good
love it.
battery life,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah, everything on it. I love it. The flip out screen, the 7Ds didn't have that, so that was something that really I was hyped about to get that camera. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are hating on the one SD card slot, but that's not even an issue.
which is all I have in
So-
mind too, because people are always like,
Right.
"Oh, you need a redundant or a backup." I mean,
Right.
we both shot for now.
I know if you're shooting weddings, yeah, but other than that,
yeah, it's like, and how often have you had an SD card fail, like in camera?
right. I mean, knock on wood, but
I've
right.
only doing this for like what 10 years, we'll call it 12 years or whatever. I've never
Yeah.
had one fail. Not in
Right,
the
same
camera.
here.
Like I've had them fail like after I've put the footage up or put it up, and then
Yeah.
I'm like, this something doesn't seem right, and then I just toss it because it's not worth it. But
Right. Yep. 100%.
so yeah,
So yeah, I mean, I love the camera.
that's
I
cool.
love it.
Yeah, it's
So
good.
it was a good upgrade.
Makes a difference when you've got. We talked about that analogy when you've got something that you feel connected to. You're more creative, and
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you get a better product, whether it's photos.
So
or
I
videos or
literally
whatever.
try to go out now and I try to shoot with just a I just try to bring a camera and like maybe 2 lenses. Some like when I go out wildlife shooting, I'm doing something like vlogging and trying to shoot. I'll bring all my stuff, but I used to just bring so much gear with me, and I'm like, I really need to like minimalize like everything everything I have.
That's really what I.
It's crazy.
That's what I struggle with. Is like.
Yeah.
I want to bring all my stuff with me every day. That I don't even bring
Yeah.
my camera. I end up just saying, I'm not going to bring it. Like I'm even
Right,
talking
because it's too much.
It's just too much.
It turns out to be too much.
Like
Yep.
I should be bringing. I drive an hour for work every day. I should have my camera every day, even if it's like in the morning I'm going to grab coffee, and then I want to be able to grab my camera, and I still don't do that, even though I went and bought
Yep.
this camera for something smaller. Maybe it's something that I need to work on in the near future for sure.
It took me, I struggled with that a lot. It was hard.
It's because I feel
but-
like I always want to like have. Well, what if I need that 20 mil lens? Or
Exactly.
What
There's always oh, what if I'm going to use this?
it's frustrating. You get your.
I'll pack my backpack full and I'll be like, what am I doing? Like, I don't need
Right.
this. I don't need this.
And it's so
yeah.
heavy. It's like maybe
Yep.
one of these days we'll do a podcast like an overhead of like the stuff we've
that'd be
got
cool.
or something. I don't know, but it's just so
Yeah.
much stuff, and like you never use it all. Like at this point now, I've got like lav mics in my backpack. I've got my shotgun.
Yep.
I've got my shotgun that I put on my camera that's smaller. It's like, what do I need 4 microphones for? I don't even do that much video.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
I'm 10 times past that.
Yeah, you.
It's
I
wild.
always call you when I'm gonna buy
I have
a
a
new
cart
piece of
over
gear.
there of
Yeah.
stuff.
I'm always like,
Yeah.
dude, what gear should I get or this and that? And you're like, I'd go this way. And I'm like, now I get.
Dude, I was the other day, not really change subjects, but I was looking at the Weeble S gimbal,
Right.
and I have a Ronin S
Weeble S
gimbal, like a
looks
handheld
so
gimbal,
cool.
and I'm like, it looks sick, but it's like, and I sat there, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get it, and then I'm like, why do I need another gimbal? Like, what's
Right.
And
it's
for what?
It's great because it's got like the overhead handle, like you can shoot like.
Yeah.
And it's like $400. It's not crazy expensive.
It's exactly
And
yeah.
so I
Now
get
you're gonna
it.
make me
Maybe
buy
you
it.
should buy it. Maybe if you buy it, I'll use it. How's
Yeah.
that? No.
Yeah, there you go.
So cool. I think that was a good.
Yeah.
I think that was a great episode. I think we were gonna get a little bit into camera lenses, but maybe we'll save that for the next episode because I think at that point you start to talk about focal lengths a lot, and I could easily go another hour, and I don't want to bore people.
Yeah.
Too much.
Well, also too, if there's any videographers or photographers listening to this podcast, let us know what cameras you're using, and even if you have some tips for an upcoming episode or
yeah, or
something like that.
Yeah, leave a comment. Why did you buy your camera? Like, what was your main 2 reasons on the camera you're currently using, or if you're looking to save to get a different camera, like what is that camera that you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, we already know Canon's the best, but we'll leave it
all
at
right.
that.
We'll maybe we'll have a shootout. The problem is I've got a camera that's getting older in technology, and you've got one that's like, so how about that A7, what is it, A7 IV Mark, or A7R Mark IV? It's like 62
Oh, the new,
megapixels. Dude,
yeah.
it's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. So cool. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Again, please subscribe, like all our videos, and if you're an audio person, again, remember we're on Spotify, Google Podcast. I'm gonna open up Radio Public,
Soon Apple.
Breaker. Yeah, soon on Apple. I don't know how long that's gonna take for us to get approved, but I think if we keep putting out episodes, we'll be all good.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I think. I appreciate everybody for listening, and everyone have a good night. And Dan, till next time.
Till next